Hello friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and today I'm going to give you the tools to take any song that you want and transpose it to any key that you wish to play it in. It's really not rocket science, it's just basic arithmetic. So some of you may be asking, well, what is transposing? And it's really just taking a song in any given key and putting it in a different key. And that brings up the secondary question of why would you ever need this skill? And regardless of your goals on the instrument, at some point it's going to become necessary for you. If you're someone that sings along with playing, chord charts that you find online are not always going to be in keys that are friendly to your voice. I know for me, I usually sing in E flat and B flat, and that's not the key that most songs are in. So I find myself having to transpose charts so that they fit my vocal range. But even if you're just an instrumental performer, with the limited range of ukulele, some keys really don't fit well on here. And we need to look at the range of a song, how low the lowest note is and how high the highest note is, and make sure that that actually fits on our instrument, much as we would do with our voice. Regardless of whether you're a vocalist or an instrumentalist, transposing is a great skill to have in your toolbox. Now, I know there are a lot of apps out there and websites that will auto-transpose for you, but sometimes you're just looking at a sheet of paper and you don't always have the aid of technology. And in addition to that, it really helps you understand the song and the harmony better and have a closer relationship with it. So the first thing that we need to do is we'll establish what key we are in any given song. And this is really just a really simple two-step process. Look at the first chord of the song and look at the last chord of the song. If they are identical, 99.9% of the time, that is the key that the song is in. If they are different, it is almost always the last chord of the song because we are resolving to the tonic or the home bass of that key. Now after that, you need to figure out what key you're going to transpose to, and I'm going to link below to a video that I did on finding your vocal range. And you will find that the more songs that you transpose, that there are a lot of commonalities, and you probably have keys that are good for you. And usually it's two keys, one based around the tonic or the root and one based around the dominant or the 5 chord in any given key. As I said, for me, that's E flat and B flat for the most part, unless the song has a very large range, in which case I might need to change that. So the more that you do this, the more that you're going to find commonalities between all of those songs. So let's look at a couple different ways to transpose songs. So there is an easy way to transpose without really knowing any music theory or memorizing the circle of fifths or talking about intervals or anything like that. And that's really just creating yourself a little cheat sheet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the song When You're Smiling. And I'm going to link below to a lesson that I did on that song in case you're unfamiliar with the song. It's always great to have the song in your head and in your ears already before we dive in to try to transpose it so that we know if we make a mistake, we'll hear that it sounds wrong. Now, first we need to establish the key. So the first chord of this song is F, and the last chord is F. Therefore, we are very much in the key of F. So knowing that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of paper and we're just going to write down all of the notes from F to F. So we're going to go F, G, A, B flat, and it's okay if you don't know that there's a B flat in the key of F. We'll get to key signatures in a little bit. We have B flat, C, D, E. We need to write down those 7 notes. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to prescribe Roman numerals or numbers to this so that we can see the relationship between all of these chords. So our F chord would be the 1 chord. Our G chord would be the 2 chord. The A chord would be the 3 chord, and so on and so forth. We only have 7 of them. And you might be asking yourself, well, what about major and minor and sevenths and ninths and 11ths? And none of that matters. When we transpose songs, the quality of the chord, whether it's major, minor, diminished, augmented, anything that you want, transfers to the new key. The only thing that we need to change is the letter name itself. So once we create our little matrix with our Roman numerals or our numbers telling us how each chord relates to one another and where it functions in the key, all we need to do is create another line and just write the key we're going to. We're going to C. So now C will be our 1 chord, D will be our 2 chord, and so on and so forth. And you can see how these all line up on the matrix. And you can just go through the tune and replace all of these chords with it. We look at the chart and we see that our first chord is an F. And we say, well, that's our 1 chord, right? So that's going to now become a C chord. And our second chord we have is an F major 7th. Well, we already established that the quality doesn't matter. It's still going to be a major 7th. So it's just going to be a C major 7th now. All of our Fs are becoming Cs. Now our next one here we go to is a D. So we look at our chart and we see how that functions. That is our 6th chord, which corresponds to an A in the key of C. And it's a dominant 7th chord, so it would still be a 7th. We would have an A 7th. And finally this goes to a G minor 7th chord, which we look at our chart. We say this is our 2 chord. And we just find our 2 chord in the key of C is a D minor 7th. And we can go through the whole chart in this process. Now, this is not always going to work because chords do step outside of keys. So we need ways to solve that as well. But to begin with, for probably 85% of songs that you will run across, which are just basic diatonic songs, they sit in 1 key. We can use this simple method. And as I said earlier, you'll find that you probably have your common keys that you play in. So if you get used to doing this exercise and do it enough times, it's going to become very natural to transpose to your common keys. So let's look at how we address any of these odd ones out. So how do we address chords that don't fit within our major scale? This does crop up from time to time, especially in the jazz world. We're going to run into this. So let's look at just a basic example. Let's say we're now in the key of C and we're transposing to the key of F. So we can use the same matrix that we had before. But our first chord is C, so we know that would go to an F, right? That's no problem. And then our next one, let's say it's a C sharp diminished 7th. We look at our chart and we say, well, there's no C sharp on here, so this is an issue for us. How do we solve that? And when we see these things that step outside the key, what we need to look at is the intervallic relationship, or how far apart the 2 notes are. Because that is always going to stay the same no matter what key you're in, much like the chord values. So we look at our C sharp diminished 7th, and how does this relate to our C, right? It's not our 1 chord, it's not our 2 chord. It's what we call a sharp 1, but we could think of it as just being 1 fret away from a C, right? C sharp is just 1 fret away. So we'd have to do the same thing when we go to F. We see that we're sitting in between an F and a G, so it would now be an F sharp diminished 7th. But what about something a little harder? That's pretty easy to go just 1 fret. What if we want, say, a C to an A flat 7th? Well, how far away are these notes from each other? And we want to count half steps here, or really just the number of frets that are between them, right? So we have C, and we're going to an A flat, which is right here. So we're going to go C, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're 9 half steps, or 9 frets away from each other. So we would just do the same exact thing, but start on an F, and we would have that. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that gives us a D flat 7th now. And this is really just the easiest way to think about it if you don't want to think about how things relate within any given key, or you don't know your intervals. You can really just count up to it. But for the most part, we can just use that matrix method and do whatever we want. But let's take a couple minutes to talk about, in the end, how we want to think about transposing songs. As a ukulele player and as a bass player, I tend to back up singers quite a lot, and every singer doesn't do every song in the same key. And it doesn't really make sense to me to be memorizing songs in 7 different keys. So how do I actually think about this? Because a lot of times I'm transposing right on the bandstand as I'm looking at a sheet of music that was just given to me. And really the key is to stop thinking about the letter names of chords. They don't matter. All that matters is how far apart each of these chords are. So when I look at a chart, like, when you're smiling, I look at that F chord and I know that I'm in the key of F because I've established that. I don't think about it as an F chord. That's my one chord. And in the back of my mind, I know that in the key of F, that's always going to be my one chord. So when you go through charts, a great exercise to do is just write the functionality of the chord over top of it. Is it the 1 chord? Is it the 5 chord? Is it the 7 chord in that key? And become more accustomed to thinking about songs in that manner. Because then we're not doing math every single time. We know how these chords function, and they function exactly the same in every given key. But how do you get to this point? So one way to do this is just to transpose a lot of songs. And this is great because you can really just print out sheets of paper with whatever songs you want, sit in front of the TV with a pencil and write down these matrices and transpose these songs. You don't even need your instrument. I mean, obviously you want to check yourself on your instrument and make sure that you're doing it correctly and that it sounds right, but you can do this just in exercise. And as with anything, the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. This is a practice, just like playing an instrument, and it takes time, but it gets easier and easier, and you notice the commonalities throughout tunes. The other thing is to start recognizing common chord progressions or groupings of chords, like our 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progressions such as that. We know that our 2, 5, 1 progression is probably the most popular in the history of Western music. So if you start to look for these common progressions in keys as opposed to looking at chords as these entities that just exist in a vacuum, they don't. What really matters is how the chords work together. And you want to get yourself in the mindset of seeing that when you glance at a page, as opposed to looking at just the names of the chords. I hope this helped, and please take some time this week. Pick just one song to transpose. Take something that you're very familiar with. It could be an easy tune like You Are My Sunshine or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and transpose it into a couple different keys. You'll see that it's not really that hard. I'll see y'all next week.